everyone, welcome to another mat class. Let's go ahead and just start standing today. I'm using a blue ball as a prop for inner thigh engagement, but you can do this class without a blue ball if you don't have one at home. We're going to start standing, feet hip width distance apart, parallel. Inhale, reach those arms up to the ceiling and lower the hands down as you exhale. Inhale, lift those arms up. Exhale, lower down, just getting the body moving. Let's try that one more time. Hold those arms up and allow the shoulders to come down instead of up to the ears. We're going to lean those arms up and over to the left-hand side so we stretch the right side of our body. Come back to center and do the same thing to the opposite side, to the right-hand side. Stretch the left side of the body. Make sure the abs are in and the hips aren't pressed forward. Come back to center. Do the same thing to the left, but feel how that right lung, take a few deep breaths, feel how that right lung is really expanding, maybe a little wider than the left side. And just, again, take a few deep breaths here, really get that lung to move and stretch out, and do the same thing to the right-hand side, allowing the left lung to expand. Again, posture here is important. Try not to move the hips around or increase the low back arch. Come back to center. Lower the hands down. Tuck the chin, pull the abs in, go straight into your roll down, reaching the hands to the floor. Look to your knees or just above to your thighs. Gently nod the head no. Gently nod the head yes, allowing your neck to relax a little bit. And take a few deep breaths. Feel the back of your lungs really expand. Rib cage should feel like it's spreading apart. Take another inhale. And when you're ready, exhale, shift your weight forward a little bit. And we're going to start to bend the knees, tuck the tailbone. And then from here, we're going to start to roll up. One vertebrae at a time. Head is the last thing to come up. Shoulders roll up, back, and down. Now from here, hands on your hips, feet stay still, but we're just going to come into a squat position and come up to standing. Squat position and come up to standing. So here the most important part is going to be keeping your weight on your heels, your spine long and straight. So try to avoid looking directly at your toes or upwards towards the ceiling. You just want to keep your neck in alignment. And go ahead and start adding your arms here as well. You can keep your hands on your hips, but for this purpose, I just wanted to get the arms involved, get the body really warmed up here. If you don't have a ball, you can just imagine that your knees have something in between so your knees stay aligned. Now we're going to move on to the heels or onto the toes. So lift the heels, hold it here, pull those abs in. Lower those hips down, bend the knees, and come up to standing. This one's a little tricky because you have to really find your balance here. Watch that the shoulders aren't shrugging up to the ears. And notice where your weight is on your feet. I know sometimes we can struggle with balance, so it's important to take note of those small details so we can correct them. Do just a few more. Start standing with the arms in a circular position, heels lifted. Open those arms as you lower. Exhale, lift, close the arms. Lower. Exhale, lift, close the arms. Now, from here, we're going to lift those heels again. Bend the right knee. Lift, bend the left knee. Lift, bend the right knee. Lift, bend the left knee. Now, after this next one, take the ball, if you have one, out from in between your legs. We're going to do the same exercise with the feet all the way together this time. So again, lift both heels high and then bend one knee and then the other. So these are called prances when we're doing these on the reformer in studio. But when we're doing them at home, it's more of a brisk walk or a slow, almost jogging motion with the feet. And the point is to really get those heels lifted to their highest range of motion so the calf muscles are working. Fast is fine if you really want to get the body to warm up, but I find that slow and controlled gives your muscles that really deep work. So let's just do a few more. Again, keeping those hips even, not letting them rock uneven from each other. If your hips had headlights, they'd be straight forward. All right, from here, bring your heels together, toes apart. So heels are touching now. We're in a Pilates V stance. So look down to your feet and make sure you see a letter V. Bend those knees, come up to standing. Again, bend those knees and come up to standing. You can incorporate the arms here. You don't have to. You can always keep your hands down by your sides. But like I mentioned before, just warming up the body, incorporating those arms is usually a good way to start. It's a little deceiving, but my knees are actually pointing to the outer diagonals instead of straight forward. So make sure that if your feet are in a letter V, your knees also bend, making a letter V as well. Now bring the hands behind the head, open stance with those legs, still in the open V, if you will. From here, lower those hips down and come up. So we're almost sitting those hips down where it feels comfortable and where it feels like we're getting a deep connection. Now, when you come up to standing, make sure that the heels are pressing into the floor. We want those hamstrings to work. We don't just want this to be all about the front of our thighs. Elbows open, chest is open, but make sure the ribs are knit together. Abs pulled in. I always like to wiggle my toes sometimes, make sure that my weight is exactly where it should be. Just a few more. Make sure to incorporate your breath as well. Now hold it down here and we're going to do small little pulses. So again, using our breath, I always like to exhale when I lift, and when I'm doing pulses, the breath is shorter. So let's just do a few more. Come up to standing. Lower the hands down, and let's go into another roll down here with our feet together. Again, focus on lengthening the spine, looking at your knees or just above to your thighs. Bend the left knee, raise the right arm up to the ceiling. Getting a little rotation, and do the same thing to the opposite side. Bending the right knee, raise the left arm up to the ceiling. Both hands together and slowly roll on up. From here, let's move on to our mat. Knees bent, feet flat. We are just kind of adjusting ourselves on our hips, holding on to the backs of the legs. We're going to lean back all the way until we're laying down on our backs with our hands down by our sides. Bring the feet a little closer together. We're going to go into some bridge work. Now, I like to use the ball for this. Again, inner thigh engagement, it's something that I like to work on. But if you don't have one, you don't need a ball. That's fine. Now, before we actually go into our bridge, we're going to start with some pelvic tucks. Exhale, pull the belly in and tuck the tailbone. Think of flattening the spine down. So pelvic tucks are important because they start to introduce your ab work into your workout versus letting other muscles kind of take over and those abs come in secondary. Tip I like to do is, and I'll do this in a little bit, I like to reach my arms up to the ceiling. And the reason why I like to do that so much is because it's easier for you guys to see kind of what my pelvis is doing. And the movement is small, so don't think that it has to be something super huge. As long as you feel your abs connect down when you exhale, that's really the goal of this exercise. Let's continue to do a few more of these pelvic tucks, keeping those arms straight up to the ceiling. Remember, you don't want the glutes to engage when you tuck, just those low abs. Sometimes it helps if we put our hands on our glutes so that when we tuck the tailbone, we just ensure that they're not working. Press the hands down by your sides, reach those arms back up again after you've adjusted, and exhale, tuck the tailbone, pull the belly in, and lift those hips up into your bridge, pressing knees and shins forward. Inhale at the top, and exhale, slowly lower down one vertebrae at a time. When you're doing these bridges, and continue to do a few more, your knees are bent, but they're right over the heels. And the reason why I like the ball is because a lot of the times when we're lowering those hips down, we have a tendency of either collapsing the knees together or allowing them to collapse apart. And you don't want either one of those two. You want them to be directly over the heels in line with the hips. Press the hands down, keep your back flat. We're going to lower those hips down, tap the glutes to the mat, and press up. So as we're doing these hip presses, make sure that your back is flat. We're not articulating, we're not pressing one bone down at a time. The back is flat. So you're going to feel this a lot more in the hamstrings and the glutes to control your hip stability. And again, you want to work equally through both those legs. Don't just lean more on the right leg or more on the left leg. Keep everything really center, really even. Hold this last one at the top and slowly lower back down. I'm going to grab that ball and put it away. I'm not going to use it until a little bit later. But for right now, we're going to hug the knees into the chest. Exhale, lift the chest up and lower everything back down. Just a little stretch in the opposite direction. Lift those hips back up again. Hold it there. We're going to go into some single leg bridging. So reach that right leg up to the ceiling. Try to get it straight. Lower those hips down an inch, lift an inch. Down an inch, lift an inch. I always say an inch, but it's always a little bit more than that. I just want to emphasize the movement being small and controlled. And if I say more than an inch, usually my clients will take it really far. When you're done with this side, let's go ahead and switch on over to the left side. So left leg up to the ceiling, hold it here, lower and lift. Make sure that you're not trying to overcompensate by lifting that left hip higher than the right hip, and that tends to happen quite a bit. Not a problem. It's just good to be aware of that so we can self-correct here. Lower that left leg down, lift those hips again so that they're back to center, and then when you're ready, exhale, slowly start to lower down one vertebrae at a time. Relax the tailbone at the very end, hug the knees into the chest, and lift your head, neck, and shoulders. It's just to get the spine to move in the opposite direction. Reach those legs up to the ceiling, hold it there. Lower the upper body down. We're just stretching the back of the legs. So hamstrings here, you can point and flex the feet. That'll give you a more intense stretch. Hands behind the hamstrings. Bend the knees to tabletop. Exhale, lift into a chest lift. Hold it here. Now memorize what this feels like. You should feel the middle of your spine really pressing down into the mat. Bring your hands behind your head and make sure that the head really weighs into the hands. That's what's going to help you. Exhale, lift into a chest lift and lower down. Exhale, lift and lower down. Now today we're starting all the way down on the mat and exhaling into a chest lift high, trying to keep your hips still, your legs all the way together and your knees directly over your hips with your shins parallel to the floor. Exhale as you lift, inhale as you lower. Elbows are wide. Hands behind the thighs, lift your chest up a little bit more. Hold it there, just kind of feeling out what this feels like. Grab onto one knee as the other extends, and then switch to the other side. So it's almost like you're pulling that knee in a little bit, but you're also using your arms to lift your chest lift up a little higher, or at least have it be consistent throughout this movement as you're switching the legs. Hips are still. We're not changing the hip position. We're not wobbling from side to side. And we're exhaling every time we pull a knee in. So inhale, switch, exhale, pull. Inhale, switch, exhale, pull. Really starting to incorporate our breathing here. Now hold that left leg, reach that right leg up. Hold on to the right leg instead as that left leg stretches, and we're going to pull that leg into the chest and switch. So we're doing a very similar movement, but now both legs are straight. And we're pulsing the legs into the chest about 2 times. If your hamstrings are feeling tight here, you can always go back to that exercise we just did. So one knee will be bent and one leg will be straight. But if you're feeling like you can add a little bit more flexibility, go ahead and straighten those legs. Bring those knees down, rest your hands by your sides. Bring your legs to tabletop. Lift the head, hands behind the head, and exhale, come into a chest lift. Going into those toe taps, we're going to let the right toes tap down and then go over to the left-hand side. For this exercise, pelvic stability is what you want to focus on. So the more stable your hips are, the more low abdominal muscles you're going to feel instead of low back strain. Lower everything down. We're going to do a second set. You can always put your hands right underneath the tailbone to help support your abs if you're feeling a little like you need some support or strength. But I'm going to bring my hands by my sides as I do a second set. Now, this second set of toe taps, I'm going to leave my head, neck, and shoulders down on the mat. It's just a slightly different feeling for those abs. I tend to feel a little bit more of my upper abs trying to contain my ribs down when I do this. So you can go ahead and try it either way, head up or head down. Lower the feet down and relax the tailbone. Open those arms out wide, let the knees lean to the left. As you look to the right, gentle spine twist. Come back through center and do the same thing to the opposite side. Taking a few breaths. Come back to center. Hands down by your sides. Bring your hands behind your thighs. Chest lift. Press your hands forward and we're going to pump those arms 1 inch up, 1 inch down. Going into our hundreds. You can't really hear my breath pattern here, but for those of you who are familiar with 100 breath pattern, it's inhale for 5 counts, exhale for 5 counts. We can stretch those legs out into a diagonal angle. The lower you go, the more challenging. The higher you go, the more supportive. Or if you need to modify, legs to tabletop. Doing a few more here, making sure we have lots of energy through those arms, through the fingertips, and if you're stretching out your legs through your toes, and bend the knees and bring it back in. Reach those arms up, extend those legs out long. Give your body a full stretch here, really reaching in opposite directions. Exhale, lower the hands down, add a chest lift at the same time. Press the backs of your legs into the floor as you come up into a seated position, reaching those arms forward, head looking down, and then stack up to seated. Try that a few more times. Tuck the tailbone, pull the waist back, rolling onto our backs, reaching those arms overhead. Exhale, lower the hands, tuck the chin, lift the chest, slowly coming into our roll up. And make sure the low back is lengthened here. One more time. So a good trick is, like I mentioned before, pressing the backs of the legs, backs of the calf muscles onto the mat when you do this acts as an anchor from the lower body as the upper body is really doing a lot of the work here. Hands down by your sides. Hug the knees into the chest. We're going to balance on our tailbone a little bit. So there's a few different ways you can hold on to the knees. If you're a little inflexible, you can bring your hands behind your thighs. I'm going to put mine on my shins, and then from here, just a little tester, I'm going to roll back and roll up. Lightly tap my toes to the mat. Sometimes this doesn't always work as smoothly, momentum kicks in, but you want to really make sure that it's in one swooping motion and you're not planting your feet down, you're just gently tapping the toes down onto the mat when you come up. Inhale as you roll back, exhale as you lift. Once we've done our last one, let's adjust our hips back again. We're going to go into a reverse plank. So palms behind your shoulders, lift those hips forward with the legs straight. So it's exactly like a plank, just in the opposite direction. We're looking up to the ceiling instead of down to the floor. Same thing applies here. You want your tailbone to be tucked. Your chest can be open, but not at the expense of lifting the rib cage too wide apart. And toes pointed, pressing those heels into the mat. Continue to breathe so that we're not bringing all of the tension into our neck. Before we lower down, stretch those arms forward. From here, transition onto your knees. Reach those arms forward. Going into a thigh stretch here, press the shins and the feet into the mat. Make sure your knees all the way up to your head is one long line as we lean back and come up. I always think of those garden chairs where you sit down and it leans back and it only hinges from the front legs and comes up. The most important thing you want to do is really squeezing your glutes. And you will feel the front of your thighs engage as well, although it is called thigh stretch because you are getting some length, but you are also contracting them, especially as you come up. Keep those arms straight. Lots of energy, all parts of the body here. Let's do one more. Inhale back and exhale, lift. Lower the hands down. We're going to lay down on our sides. So let's transition down. Going into a little banana shape with our body. So straighten those legs, but bring those legs a few inches forward of your hips, just a few. Hand presses into the mat. Both legs extend, squeeze the inner thighs, exhale, lift the legs and lower. So just a little double leg lift to get the legs prepared for our sideline work. Getting those obliques to lift off of the mat, and exhale every time you lift. Bend the top knee almost into a figure 4 stretch, and your upper inner thighs are going to pulse the bottom leg up. You can always keep the top leg straight up about hip height as the bottom leg pulses if this position for your knees isn't ideal. I know on my other side it tends to be a little tricky, but for the most part I can comfortably put my foot down in front of my body like this. Make sure you're flexing the feet and think of lengthening the heel away from the hips as you pulse up and in, and try to keep your hips as still as you can. From here, let's transition to both legs straight. Bend the top knee, extend it up to the ceiling straight, and slowly lower that leg down. Now this position, the top leg is an external rotation, so we're not pointing the knee straight forward in front of our body. It's more of an upward diagonal. If that's not ideal, you can go back to straightening the top leg and lifting it up and down, instead of bending and then straightening. But this is nice for the hips. It always feels like the hips just open so much wider with this particular exercise. And if flexibility is an issue, you don't have to straighten straight up to the ceiling. Just straighten your leg to where you can and control the leg down. Don't just plop that leg down. Again, keeping your hips still, pulling those abs in. All right, from here, flex both feet. Just the top leg is going to lift. It'll pulse forward and pull back. So as we're pulsing that leg forward and back, we're just going to make sure that the hips again are stable. So a big theme of this class today is hip stability. It's really important to engage the correct core muscles, but it's also nice because you strengthen your back, you're correctly recruiting other, let's say, leg muscles as well. So there's a lot of benefit to this. That's why it's really important. We're going to finish the last one, then reach that foot forward. Internally rotate that foot so that the toes are kind of drooping down, and we're just going to lower and lift that leg. So lower, tap the toes down and lift. So little toe dips here. You're going to start to feel this a lot in your outer thighs, and that's a good thing. Okay, so just focus on keeping those hips still and let your outer thighs do all of the work. If you start to cramp, please take a break. No need to push through that cramp. Let's do 2 more. And lower that leg down. Roll onto your back. Take that same right leg and bring it to a figure 4 stretch. Breathing here, allowing that muscle to relax, and then come back down on the mat. Reach the right leg up straight, left foot presses down. Draw small, slow circles with that right leg. By keeping the left knee bent, it's much easier to focus on hip stability. Try straightening the left leg if you want more of a challenge. Make sure that you change the rotation here. So now instead of drawing the circles inward, let's draw the circles outward, or the reverse direction than what you just did. Let's try a second set with the left knee bent again and reverse the circles one more time. Pulling the arms down flat against the mat and rest the foot down. Left leg up to the ceiling, hold it there. Slow, small circles on the left side. Right heel is bent. Now, the reason why you want that circle to be on the smaller side, go ahead and switch the rotation, straighten the right leg, is because you don't want that leg to run into that knee if you're modifying that way. Now, if your leg is straight, that's fine, but the small, slow circles also add more hip stability. Go ahead and bend that right knee one more time and reverse the direction. You can very well keep the leg completely straight, or you can keep it bent. It's up to you as we do these leg circles. I tend to like to transition in between both of them whenever I change the rotation. Plant that leg down, bring both feet together close to the hips, and open those knees out wide. And this is just to let those hips relax for a moment. Extend both of your legs, reach the right leg up, and we're going to draw big circles this time. Arms can be out to the sides as it adds more stability for the shoulders. Now for this one, allow your hips to move freely, of course with some control through the core. Reverse the circle. Make sure you go both directions with this big free movement. Plant that leg down, switch the legs, and reach the left leg up. Big circles, moving the hips freely, even allowing that left hip to lift off the floor slightly when that leg crosses over the midline of the body. Reverse the direction, make sure you go both ways. Using your exhale, exhale round, inhale, lift the leg up. Lower that leg down. Bring both feet together, hands down firmly by your sides. Inhale those arms up. Going into our roll up. Now grab the backs of your legs for this one. Lift your legs up into tabletop and stretch your legs forward, adding a chest lift. So here we're rolling up into our teaser. This is modified, it's assisted, but it's a good way to start. And you will still feel those abdominal muscles. Again, hands behind the thighs, extend those legs straight, lift the chest, proud chest, shoulders down, abs pull in, and stay seated. Transition over to your other side. So now we're going to do the same sideline work that we did, just on our opposite side body. All right, starting with those leg lifts, both legs together, squeezing the upper inner thighs, lifting up an inch, lowering down an inch. Pressing the top hand firmly into the mat, pull your abs in, and remember hip stability here is going to be key, not just to protect your spine, but also to contract the correct muscles in the legs. Lower the legs down. Bend the top leg over or in front of your body. Bottom leg is going to flex and pulse up an inch and down an inch. Again, if this position with the knee is not ideal for your body, you can keep that top leg extended long. Just keep it still as the bottom leg pulses up and down. I like to hold on to my knee here just to keep my hips a little bit more stable on this side. Pull up through the waistline. Remember, we're not slouching down into the mat. We're keeping our spine in one straight line. Lower that foot down. Extend the top leg. Now we're going to go into a little bit of a knee bend with the top leg and then stretch the leg up to the ceiling, slowly lower down. Bend the knee, stretch it up to the ceiling and lower down. You might notice one side might be a little tighter as far as the hip can rotate than the other side, and that's okay. Like I mentioned before, just extend your leg to where it feels comfortable, but make sure that your outer thighs are still working here and try to stay in as much external rotation as possible. As you bend, extend, and then slowly lower back down. Let's do one more. Slow and steady, and lower back down. From here, flex the feet, top leg lifts, pulse that leg forward and pull it back. Forward and pull it back. Don't go too far forward. It's not a kick, it's just a little pulse, and you'll feel it if you're keeping your legs straight, how far you can go forward before you start to move the hips almost in a tucking motion, and we don't want that. We just want to keep our hips stable so that our legs are doing all the work. Pull that leg forward. Internally rotate the toes down to the floor, dip down, tap, and lift. So now we're going into a different variation of those toe dips here. Of course, we're on our side, so it's not quite the same abdominal work, but it is a lot of outer thigh work, outer glute. The more internally rotated you have that leg, the better. You'll feel it a lot deeper in your muscles. Let's just do a few more, and remember to exhale as that leg lifts. Don't forget your breath, your abdominal engagement, pulling up through those obliques as well. Let's do just a few more here, focusing on the breath. And lower the leg down. Let's come onto our back, go into a figure 4 stretch, and hold it there. You can press your knee away from your hip just to have a little bit more of an opening sensation in the hips. Once you feel a little release in the side of the leg, bring those knees into the chest and slowly roll on up. Little rocking motion here. Transition onto your knees so that we can come down onto our bellies. Hand on the forehead. Go ahead and adjust your knees, slightly separated. Exhale, lift the upper body and lower down. Exhale, lift and lower down. Remember, for this movement, you want to keep your tailbone tucked, pubic bone pressing against the floor, and your abs pull up and in. Try not to let those abs press down into the mat as your upper body tries to lift. Rest down, and now we're going to lift those legs up a few inches and down. Upper body stays still for this one, and as long as we can keep the tailbone tucked, the glutes should be working, the hamstring should be working, but we still have lots of energy through those legs, and we are not bending the knees. Instead, we're thinking of lifting the thighs an inch off of the floor and then back down. Interlace the hands behind the low back, bend those knees. We're going to pulse the feet 2 times into the glutes. Once we've pulsed, extend arms and legs away from each other, lift the upper body, and do the same thing again. Now, every time you rest the upper body down, make sure that you're facing with your head a different direction. So when you extend and you come back down, lean on your left cheek. When you extend, come back down, lean on your right cheek. And continue to do this. Really make sure you're lifting upper and lower body into a long back extension with the head gaze down to the mat to lengthen the back of the neck. Let's try that a few times, really incorporating that breath. And rest the head down. After a few breaths, let's transition onto our hands and knees, or quadruped position. Place your hands firmly underneath the shoulders and extend your legs out long into your plank position. I tend to like my wrist in the shape of a fist for planks. It's just a little nicer on my wrist that way. But you can have your hands flat or even onto your forearms is fine. Now, continue to exhale, really push that exhale out, tuck that tailbone, and think of lengthening the neck a little bit longer. And after just another few short breaths, lower the knees, press the arms down. Now I'm going to grab the ball for this next plank variation, but you can do this without the ball. Keep your knees bent right underneath the hips and hands underneath the shoulders. Tuck the toes and exhale, lift those knees a few inches off of the mat so that your back is completely flat. Rotate the knees from side to side, creating a little twisting motion through the torso. For this one, you really have to use your exhale. That exhale is going to help contract the front of your abdominals as your obliques focus on twisting your hips from side to side. Lower the knees down and get rid of that ball. Go into a child's pose. Slide that ball away. You won't need it for this next one. Just a little back body stretch, hands on the mat, extend your legs out and press your hips up into a downward dog or pike position. Inhale, come back to plank, and exhale, lift those hips up and back. Here, we just want to focus on not only just using the full body, but also getting some length in the body, in the arms, in the spine, in the legs, some contraction of the abs. Legs are still working here. And on the last one, walk your hands back to your feet. You're at the bottom of your roll down. Take a few deep breaths and slowly roll on up. Roll your shoulders up, back, and down. Thank you for joining me, and don't forget to like this video and subscribe. I'll see you guys later.